And you're muted. Nope. Oh, yes.
Good
All
evening,
right.
Singapore. This
Good
is Melanie
evening.
from Malaysia. How are you, Ashok?
I am fine, madam. And how have you been for the month of March?
Not great, but not
I
great,
don't
but I'm looking great.
All right, don't worry. After today's show, I hope you will be livened up and looking forward to next month.
I hope so too. And for those who've joined us, thank you for joining us because I do see a few people live on LinkedIn. Please say hello and make my day so that I know your presence. So it'd be lovely to, get a hello. So Ashok, tell me, how has it been for you?
Okay, so um, personally, as I must say, it's been another month of learning again for me. Every situation is really learning, and I must say, this show again has helped me learn a lot. Right? I, that's why I love the show, Leadership in Flow Asia. Is I have mentioned it so many times. It's almost like reading a leadership book once a week, right?
Nice.
But this time you get it live from practitioners, people who have actually gone through the mills, the ups and downs, the trials, the tribulations, the happiness, and we're learning from them. And there's nothing like learning or modeling excellence, right? Learning from
Nice.
people, you know.
Nice.
But of course, then it is up to us to apply it. And I hope all our listeners who have been following our show, reading our LinkedIn posts and all that, have been benefiting, you know.
I'm
And
sure.
I hope so. And speaking
I'm
of benefiting, for the month of March, all right. So
Hey,
we started off with
before that, Ashok,
ah, yes, ma'am.
before that, I have to say that I feel I've learned so much too. So I totally agree with you. But we have two people who are saying hello. Let's say hello to them. Please don't
Okay.
run away. We're gonna say hello. Luis Moraes is back in our life, lah. Hi, Luis. Thanks for joining us because at least we have someone to interact. And the next person who said hello, guess who?
From
Shamli
Birmingham,
Susan.
United Kingdom, Shamni Susan.
Right. Waiting for the student tour to start. Yes,
Is she
Shamli is
referring to
starting.
our show, the
No,
student tour?
she's referring to herself. Shamli is
Oh,
going
okay.
to start studying all over again. And so while we are working hard here, Shamli is having a holiday. Sham, thank you for dropping in and saying hello. Again, Luis Marias, thank you for dropping in and saying hello. Try and stay with us so that maybe we can chat. So I say a couple more other people. It will be lovely to get a hello from you. And you know what? Today, our topic today, I put up a video this morning where you gave me a lot of positive feedback about the video show.
No, before I get into that, okay. Yes, you're right. Let me get into the video. It's been very interesting because I like the way you linked, right? This month's topic. Stop laughing. This month's topic was about leaders of change, right? And we learned a lot. And yes, we're going to be sharing with you all about the four leaders, right? And I like the fact that this morning I think you put up a video on about authentic leadership and inviting us to know more about authentic leadership through today's show. Okay, I must say it got me piqued. I'm very curious. Maybe you can give us an over. Stop smiling. You know, give us an overview, right, of what you mean by authentic leadership
Thank
before we
you.
get into the summary of the
I,
guest.
I'm actually so grateful you're not giving feedback about the video. I was trying to get people to join us, and I said, this morning I'll do a video so that more people join us. Hello, Radhika. Thank you so much for joining us. And yes, my friend Udam Singh from EPO is here. So thank you very much for those who've joined us. Let's get on with it. So, what is authentic leadership? Of course, when we were having a conversation, I'm a person with framework. And one of those
Mhm.
things that I realize is, the four speakers that we had in the month of March, right? One thing that I kept looking when I was trying to summarize their story was I think they showed up authentically, not that the others didn't. So,
Sure.
in the summary, what we're going to do today is we are going to introduce the idea of what is authentic leadership
Okay.
and what are some ways to look out for authentic leadership? And then we're going to take on the framework from there. Hi, Sasidaran. Thank you very much for joining us. So now, Chris Lomas, thank you very much from Moldova all the way. Thank you for joining us. You today, I'm really very excited now. Now, for the listeners or audience who've joined us now, I can't even remember my next line. Do us a favor, right? When you think of authentic leadership or an authentic leader, I'm sure you're one and you may have met one. Put it in comments what makes you think that they're authentic. How do you identify a person or a leader as an authentic person or an authentic leader? Just put it up and let's see where it gets us. Thank you, Sasidaran. He like to know youth and leadership. Well, today we're going to talk about leadership and authentic leadership, Sasi. So as they do that, let me just introduce you to my most favorite framework, which is actually from the book Your True North by Bill George, right? So what I've actually done is, we've summarized it. So a lot of times, sometimes we have clients who talk to us and say, we want our leaders to be authentic, but really, do we know? I think frameworks help. So what I'm going to do first is quickly introduce our audience to what does it, what is authentic leadership and what's the framework, and then Ashok and I are going to weave the story of our speakers in the last 4 weeks into this model so that you can then see how you fit into this model and what you can take away from that. All right. So as we do that, Chris Lama says it's transparency, and I totally agree with you. But as we do that, now what I loved about this book, Your True North, was this, right? As I read the book, this is really one of my, I would say, the best book about authentic leadership that I have read. Now, why do I say that? This book actually uncovers stories of leaders that we have heard of, read of, but from point of view of, how they discovered their authenticity, right? Now, first, all of these leaders had a life story. Now, all of us have a life story. You would agree with that. Some of us think our life story is worth sharing. Some of us may think, my life story is too simple. But I can tell you the stories that, all of us, all the people we meet, if we sit down and listen to each other's story, we all have a life story. We all have stories of our life that we have translated to what the meaning it makes in our life, and we use that to transform or make our choices. So all of them have a life story, so do you, right? Now, I'm not too sure whether everybody would agree with me, right? All of us have been in situations, right, where we lose our way, where we are at crossroads and we don't know whether you want to go here or there, right? People who are working in organization will always say, my dream is to start my own business, right? Typically, crossroads. This month is International Women's Day. Typically, women will struggle with, should I pay attention to my career or raising my children, right? These are crossroads that we all, at some point in our life, we had to make choices. And then there are crucibles, a price that you need to pay for what you believe in, right? Now, we tend to look at stories and, we find these stories inspirational when we hear how people went through a difficult time. The Nelson Mandela story, the Gandhi story. We love this story. Oprah Winfrey story, because they all had crucibles, right? And they had to pay a very high price in making the right choices, right? Or what is seen as right, because when they were right, they were successful. Now, this is something I believe everybody has. It's a matter of whether you've written down the story. So, this is the first part where, when we're able to record down our stories, we will know what are the parts of our life story that makes us who we are today, based, and how do we then make our choices, right? Now, the next part is really, really exciting for me, because these are the things that they found authentic leaders do. Now, I'm sure, Ashok, you would have had your life difficulties where you had to make choices, right? Now, what they found is this. These leaders, I call it pains to pearls, right? When we go through a difficulty, how people say that, it was such a difficult time, but, on a hindsight, when I look back, that's probably one of my most valuable event or valuable lessons in life. Now, for one to actually look at their difficulty and say, you know what, I learned from it, I grew from it, I became a better person, or adversity introduced me to myself, we need to be aware. Now, what do we need to be aware? We need to be aware not just about our weaknesses, but our strength. What is it that we bring to the table? How can we make our difference? What is our vocation, right? And all of this lies in awareness. Do I know who I am? And do I know who I am not? I think a lot of times when we talk about awareness, we're talking about, do I know who I am? But a lot of times also, right, we figure out who we are by knowing who we are not too, right? Then we talk about values. What is really important for you? Now, if you look at losing your journey, whenever it comes to crossroads, a lot of times when it's crossroads, that's because we have two really important values which are equally important for us, equally meaningful for us. Now, it is during these difficult times we then have to make choices or decide or define ourselves as to what is more important. Now, just at this moment, I'm thinking of Jacinta Ardern, actually, right? When Jacinta Ardern resigned and she said, I don't have enough gas in my tank. Some people applauded, some people criticized her, right? If you think about it. And, that, some people say that time is right, she's given enough to the country. There was a lot of criticism around. She knows, she's not going to make it, so she's resigning. Whatever it is, right? If you think about it, she was very clear when she thought, when she believed the country needed her, right? And she had it in her to serve the country, she gave it all, right? So she put the country before her family. Now, if you remember the video on the shooting, she will clearly explain how she's not spending time with her young kid at that time, right? Because she put the country before her family. And now she realizes that, I don't have enough gas in my tank. And now I'm setting my family as a priority. And this is how we make daily choices, right? And these are difficult choices, and we got to be true to ourselves. The third part is actually what we call sweet spot. Sweet spot is typically what is my gift, my talent, my competency, who I am, and how do I now turn this to meet the needs of the world currently. A lot of us have talents, right? But if the talent is not relevant, it's useless, right? It's a hobby then, right? So my talent, my skills, my competency, and who I am needs to be able to serve the world, to make the world a better place, for us to then turn that into a business. So this is what we call the sweet spot. Supporting. I don't know, Ashok, like when we started Leafa, it was just me and Sham. And you know this, right? You have really contributed so much to the show at the back end, as much as you give us credit. And with the three of us, we know how we're contributing to each other's growth. We don't feel alone, right? I run a show alone called Being Whole, Being Me. I know the difference in the show when I run alone and now when I run with a support team. So, support team is, do you know who are the people around you who will give you the support that you require for you to be the person you need to be and want to be? That's what we mean by support team. Finally, integrated life, very simple. Can we come together as a person? We're not two different people. Authentic leaders don't have different set of values, different set of thinking for personal life and corporate life. If they value people both ways. And that's exactly what it is, right? And finally, quick one. What they found is this. Now, if you think about authentic leaders, and we can talk about one or two leaders in the book, as we connect the dots with our four leaders, right? Now, you'll find one thing very consistent with all authentic leaders: they're purpose driven. It's not about them, it's not about their career, it is about what is required of them as a person first, a leader next, to serve the purpose that they're called to do. Now, when they do this, you know how we talk about leaders who have a vision, right? When you have a visionary leader, what do? They know, well, great leaders always know that they can't do this alone, which is why you need to be able to inspire people around you to catch on with the vision you have, which means that you then empower other people to become leaders. Now, when we do that, when we are able to empower other people to share the vision, to be part of our dream, and go towards, mobilize towards the same space, same vision, what happens is global leadership. Because we are now able to get people from different parts of the world to say, we're all working towards one vision, which is a better world in their own way. So these are some things that we have put together, right? Happy to put this in the comment later for those who want, or maybe you PM me and I will send you these slides, right? Maybe that's easy. Then I get to talk to you. So that's the quick summary of the framework for today's show.
Right. Uh, you know what? I've got a lot of questions brewing in my head, Muller, but I'm going to leave it to our uh, viewers who are watching in to ask those questions, right? So, in the summary, what I'm hearing is this: we all have our own life story. Those life stories are very valuable to us because during those life stories, we have made choices, consciously or unconsciously, but we have made choices. And these are choices where we can now reflect on and look at what are our strengths, our weaknesses, and then look at our purposes or our values from there. Sorry, identify our values, and then be able to focus on what is our purpose and move forward with the right support going forward in that sense. Right.
That's
So, I
right.
mean, that's what I'm hearing. Right. And while you were mentioning that, I could see how our guests would come in the month of March. Right. Uh, they probably went through this journey too, you know. So what I'm going to do is this: let me do a summary of each of the guests who came through, right? I'll talk about what they shared, and I'll talk about what hit me, right? And then you link up with the authentic leaders framework, and maybe you can then share with us what you see from your point of view. Would that be okay? Good. All right. Excellent. All right. So who did we have first? We had Mel, right? Melanie, right? Uh, to me, her key message was about transformational leader. Now, what I realized about her was this: they, in fact, for all our guests this month, right? They had something in common. They had a question that kind of shifted their belief, or not belief, but their actions, or made them reflect. And for Mel, right, the question that always came up during the show, and I can see that reflecting in her life, is how can I learn to do it well? For example, right? Yes, she took on a CEO role when she was very new to the organization, less than 2 years, right? But she had a lot of years of sales experience, and in her own words, she felt that okay, she's pretty competent in what she does. She's confident, and competent in what she does. But what was the reason for taking on that role? It was to learn more about all the other parts of the business, right? And to me, I saw that as a personal growth for her, right? And of course, then when she jumped into the leadership part, when she became the CEO, she was honest enough to understand that she does not know everything. And that's why she continuously told us she was leaning on subject matter experts to understand, to learn. She had no problems about that. Now, what was also interesting was she then signed up for an EMBA. You remember that part, right? She signed up for an EMBA to see how she can do things even better, right?
Mm.
So within that short period of time, she's just been constantly learning, and that came up all the time. Yep. And I like her views on business growth, because I remember when you asked her about culture, right? About driving the culture of the organization, and she was very clear about this. And you know what? Hey, wait a minute. I'm not going to compromise my leadership brand. I'm going to make sure there's a balance between my leadership brand and the organizational brand. And I thought that was very good. So she was very clear about her strengths and how
Mm.
she was linking up with the organization.
Mm.
And she made it very clear to us. Yes, as much as she's balancing it, she also knows what is more important for her staff is that she demonstrates the intentions to build trust.
Mm.
So that is what I got from her, from Mel's sharing. Yep.
Nice, nice summary. But you know what stood out for me that I think you didn't say, which was like the shock for me was, when she did her master's, she said SME leaders are transactional.
That's right. That's right.
And despite the data that say for SME to be successful, one
Mhm.
needs to be transactional. She chose to be transformational,
That's right.
right? So for me, that hit me hard because first and foremost, I knew after she said it, there's some truth to that, difficult
Mhm.
truth. But then again, right, like, oh, okay, but she is still choosing to go against the data of what it means to be successful. So if we just look at Mel's story, right? So more than her life story, I mean, she has a life story,
Mhm.
how she transitioned into what she was doing to, joining the training industry, right? And the difficult choices that she actually had to make. But more importantly, when we look at this, right, it's really interesting for us to see how she's very aware of her strength as to what she
Mm.
brings to the table as a business developer because her background was a business developer. And when she took on the role of the CEO, right, what did she immediately do? Right? She immediately signed up for MBA.
Yep.
So can you see how she's so purpose driven that she decides that I need to do the right thing for the people I'm leading, right? And if you just look at the bit where she refuses to be transactional but she wants to be transformational, her value shows up because she doesn't think jobs should be transactional because
Mm.
she is very interested in leading people and helping them grow as individuals, as people first. So again,
That's
her value for people shows up. It's not value for results, but value for people and results through people. So she does it over and over again. Sweet spot, right? If you look at Mel's story again, now she built the business during the pandemic. She came on as a leader, on board as a leader, really in an emergency situation,
right. Mhm.
right? And she knew what her role was. So she used her business development strength to build the business, to build the processes that the business needed while figuring out what does it mean to be a leader, i.e.
Right.
CEO. Yeah. And then she also looked at the support system, right? So in her case, she said they had a whole team that was supporting her on one hand to become the leader, the business, or the culture of the
Mm.
organization. And we know, like, if you listen to Mal's interview, it is very clear for Mel that she leads one life and this is how she is. And she's not sorry about making tough choices,
Mm.
about having to do things that is required for the business, which she thinks are, strengthens the culture of the organization. So I just wanted, to when I looked at it, I could put Mel in all of these five spaces, right? Again, you know, this is a story we did not uncover with Mel, not because it's not there, but we didn't uncover in our session, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, like, as we do that, can I just read out what Luis Marias is saying? Thank you, Luis. He says an authentic leader is empathetic, real, even if it gets uncomfortable. Exactly. Focused on growing his or her people. And I have to add on here, right? The beautiful thing about authentic leaders is this, right? Um, they have weaknesses, and it's okay for them to have weaknesses and show to them. Right? Udam Singh, thank you. He says, to me, an authentic leader is he who keeps transforming his followers into better leaders than himself. Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, a student who's better than the teacher is what
Yep.
Udam Singh. All right.
No, thank you very much for that, Malar, because I can see the links. And for all our viewers today, if you have got any questions for our master Malar, just put it in there, right? And I'm sure she will answer these questions. Okay, so we had Akash after that, right? Now, Akash's story was also interestingly painful at first because what happened was there was a suicide in his office many years ago. And in his own words, the person left on a Friday and never came back on a Monday, right? And and his to me, his question that he kept asking himself was, what could we have done differently, right? And and he looked at mental wellness then, right? Because he saw the issue was around mental wellness, and he said, how can we make difficult conversations safe? That was his driving motive. He said, okay, it's about mental wellness, but how do I now make this difficult conversations safe? And he personally had a belief. His personal belief was that mental wellness is a shared responsibility between the family and organization, or community and organization, right? So so in his growth, right? In his leadership growth, what I saw was this. He was very moved by the incident and he wanted to make a difference. So what he did was he garnered support, resources, working with his HR, and even people outside of his organization through social service agencies who are experts in mental wellness, right? In being able to curate, design conversations within the organization, right? Where they were bold enough to support those conversations. And I like one thing he did, right? Where, because remember, his focus was always about pushing them to make this difficult conversations easy in a safe space. So he designed an interactive session where the title of it was, how can we help others? And he told us very clearly the reason why they designed that was, it is not about coming to learn about what is the issues with you, but appealing to the people's inspiration to be able to help others, right? And then what he did was, okay, can you still hear me, Muller? I think you can hear me, Muller. You're muted, Muller. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. It happens. It happens.
I'm sorry.
No
So what
worries.
happened was, I will say what happened. I was trying to put up Mel's YouTube link on the comments for people to
Sure.
click, and it started playing the starting music, and I panicked
No
because I
worries.
thought I was starting the whole show again. I am so sorry. Okay,
No
got it.
worries. No worries. No worries. No worries. No. It just reminded me this month was also the Academy Awards, right? So did I go past my 2 minutes?
It wasn't you. So that the last 1 minute I probably missed because I was thinking, where is the noise coming from? And I was desperately
No
telling
worries,
people
no
to come
worries.
and help. Sorry.
Yeah,
I was trying to put the link and then it started playing in the background. Sorry,
yeah.
people. Okay,
No worries.
so we're
So
talking about.
with Akash, right? With Akash, then so he was moved by that incident, that suicide incident. Then he started creating safe space within his organization, where they were designing conversations where people come in and learn about how to help each other, where they could become mental wellness first aiders in that sense, right? And he thereafter started sharing these same things with the industry, right? He even shared a story about how trust within certain departments and within the organization started increasing because of these conversations, right? And what was very interesting was he also talked about how leaders came for these sessions and they opened up. They were ready to be vulnerable and shared their concerns, their views, and their personal journeys and stories, and which made the connection. The people were able to relate to the leaders, right? And of course, as we all know from Akash's story, he's taken it to the next level, right? As a community leadership, where he's looking at how can he grow the community. So apart from his organization, he's also driving the mental wellness conversations through a charity arm called the Mental Wellness Film Festival. And I think about 2 weeks ago, they were cycling from Singapore to Malacca, about 400 over kilometers back and forth, right? No, about 200, yeah, 400. So they were cycling to create awareness about mental wellness and also to raise funds, right? So that's the Akash story.
Okay, so what I love about the Akash story, I needed to just get through my. I'm so scared to
No
click anything.
worries.
Okay, now, so if you look at the Akash story, it seems like at least from our conversation with Akash, right, the suicide was a major life story for him to make a shift, right? And you find how Akash is really very anchored about making a difference within the organization and creating awareness for mental health at his level as an organizational head, right? So again, when you know how passionate he was. In fact, if you remember Akash, right, what I remember of him is that we suddenly couldn't hear him when we were going to start the show. Do you remember that? And I just loved the way he was so cool about it, right? Just wanting to fix the issue without trying to be stressed and without trying to make us feel like you can fix this technical problem, right? So that shows how agile, how resilient he was, right? But looking at Akash, if you think about it, right, how that one life story, that one suicide, you just some of us, we have life stories that is really difficult, devastating, inspiring, right? But it's just that one moment. But what Akash has done is that he's taken that to make a difference and make it his vocation to create awareness for mental health. He's made it his vocation. So if again when we think about it, right, it's really how he felt, right, as a result of it, and for him to now use that to create his own self-awareness, right, his value for people's life, right, how he values individual life, how he values mental health, right. And the sweet spot is interesting, right? So beyond work, how he's using his cycling to create that awareness for what the world needs, right? And if you look at the people, just in terms of the team that's with him in terms of cycling, they are his support team, right? Right? And you see how he's integrated his life. He's leading one life. He talks about it. He cycles about it, right? It's very congruent, I would say. All right. And I can even say that if we look at this slide, he's clear about his purpose beyond business, right? And how he's empowering all other leaders within the organization and out of the organization by talking about the story, by creating attention to the cycling. Why do we cycle? Right? And that in many ways is global leadership, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you talk about Akash, right, I can really see about the integrated part of things, because he's one and the same everywhere. You know, his business, he sees the importance of mental wellness. In the community he lives with, he sees the importance of mental wellness. It is home, family. He sees mental wellness. So it is a common thread that puts everything together. You know, so he's very integrated that way, and I guess in that sense you can call him authentic everywhere, right? Yeah, nice, nice. Thank you very much for that. Again, Mala.
Thank you, thank. But
Hmm.
when you think about authenticity, right? People who are seen as authentic are the same everywhere. You don't have. I think there are different parts of us that comes out at work, in life, in different situations. That I agree.
Okay.
But I don't think we are two, three different people, right? So, yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not saying we are two, three different people, but I've
Mm-hmm.
known of people who put different personas
Mm,
in different places.
sure.
You know, maybe some elements of the persona might come across in all the places, but certain personas become more elevated when they're working or with their family, or certain, even within certain community circles, right? Certain personas come out. But if you look at them long enough in different situations, you'll see a certain common thread. But you can see
Mm,
different personas
mm,
coming out. You know,
mm, mm.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, but and that's exactly right. We're not saying that people with personas are not authentic,
Mm,
but authentic people are just comfortable in their own skin. They don't need personas.
bingo. So that is a very important key takeaway, right?
Yeah, because if
Authentic
you
people are comfortable
yeah,
in the skin.
right there's and it doesn't mean that. I think one of those I think misunderstanding about authenticity of people, right, is that authentic people are perfect or don't have weaknesses. But if you look at people who are authentic, it is because they show the human side of them.
Mm, mm,
They are vulnerable, that people
okay.
then say, hey, this leader is authentic. Some of us can't accept it. you know it is it's the story of Jacinta Arden. It's the story of Michelle Yeoh,
Mm,
right? Who says, don't let anyone tell you, you've passed your prime, right? So it's the Asian story that's coming out through Michelle Yeoh has a loud voice now,
mm,
because we see her success, but we may have forgotten her struggle. So now
right.
her stories are surfacing, right? Her thoughts are surfacing, and how she is very, I would say, congruent. One thing that is, I've never been a Michelle Yeoh fan, right? No, yeah, she's. But now I'm one of her greatest fan right now.
Mm,
Why? Because I never thought of her as a ballerina, right? So if
right.
you just look at Michelle Yeoh's story, right, how she was actually sent, she went to the UK when she was 15 to be a ballerina, how she had an injury, and how she didn't want to take part in a beauty contest, and how she transformed every difficult situation that is given to her with a lot of hard work and persistence. One of my favorite stories about Michelle Yeoh is that, when she was given an opportunity to act, which martial arts, right?
Mm, mm,
She said she had to kick her co-star, a male co-star,
mm.
really hard, because she didn't want him to treat her differently just because she was a woman. And I thought that was such a beautiful, brilliant story, especially in the month of March
Right.
for equity. I mean, you think about it, because we tend to, whenever we think about it, when we talk about feminism, or women, right? We're saying you need to now be nicer to us, help us to fit in, right?
Mm,
Sometimes that's the story. But what I loved about Michelle Yeoh is that she is so confident that she wanted to be accepted as an equal.
right.
that story is like, something that I really really loved. Yeah, I don't know why
Okay.
I got to Michelle Yeoh now, but
No
yeah.
worries, no worries. No, speaking of Michelle Yeoh, right? I like the fact that you mentioned about how she has gone through a lot of fears, tribulation, and all that, which kind of links to our third guest that we had, Seetha, right? And
Mm,
her key message for me was facing your fear, right? And I can see how it is all linked to your authentic leadership framework in terms from a personal journey, because she was always about facing your fear. And I remember asking her a question about that, and she asked, and her question to me was, "Wouldn't you want to volunteer to know your fear?" I was like, "Whoa," and I never thought about it that way.
it's
And
really
to her, it was about the self awareness and of becoming who you are and who
mm,
you are becoming, right? So there's two levels. She wanted to know who she was and who she was becoming. And I think yes, she had a story about in China where she made a lot of mistakes and all, right? And she grew from there, but there was fear, and her question is, why is there fear? And she shared with us it was a gap in knowledge, and she wanted to fill up that gap and to build that confidence, right?
mm,
And one of
mm.
the things she did was she was starting to journal to know herself, right? And in that journaling she shared with us, it is very painful to realize that I have fear and insecurity, but accepting and reconciling with myself is important as much as it is scary, you know so I like that. And from a leadership point of view, right? Yes, she is in charge of millions of dollars of change transformation projects in her organization and all. But I think in the last 3 years, there was a realization where she felt that she is a single point of success or failure. And so, therefore, she has now started to consciously nudge the team to build their self confidence, right? So, those were my takeaways. Face your fear, face your fear. And I just love her statement. Wouldn't you volunteer to know your fear? Right.
And the worst thing is, she says it so calmly, and you're thinking,
Exactly, right? Exactly.
where's the fear hiding, right? So, I mean, again, right, if you look at Sita's story is a very strong story of she loves self-awareness. When she says, won't you like to, face your fear? That is really something that people who seek self-awareness do. If you, I mean, I don't know about you, Ashok. I think self-awareness is a double-edged sword. You want it, but once you have it, life is never the same again, because you can't go back to not knowing anymore, right? Because once your consciousness is raised, you can't afford to live your life the same way anymore. And sometimes there are times I'm thinking, I wish I didn't know this, right? Because now I know this, I can't live as if I don't know. It's- yeah. So Sita really, shows you about this self-awareness. But what struck me about Sita is really about, the story that she tells you about the so-called mistake that she made in her project in China, which is losing her way, and how she was called back immediately, and how she looked at it really, I would say, positively, and said she went back to her boss and made it right, because she reflected, she was aware. She asked herself how she's going to show up, and she was clear she wasn't sure how she was going to do it. And that was the interesting part, right? I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I assure you that I will make it right, if you think about it. And of course, after that, she went and got people to help her, I suppose, like, to how did she learn how to overcome her challenges at work. And of course, with Sita, when she talks about integrated life, she talks about how what she learns at home, she brings it to work, and what she, does at work, like the journaling, she actually brings it home. So Sita is a very, very good example here in the story that she told.
That's
Right.
right. And let's see now. We have got, oops, sorry. Evelyn Gunn says, Muller, it's very true. It's hard to go back to where you were before. You know, and you know what, Muller, when you're sharing this authentic leader framework, one
Mm.
thing that comes up to my mind is number one, it is a journey, but most importantly, in that journey, we need to have a deep level of self awareness. And I like what you said. You got to love the self awareness. You said that earlier,
I'm
and
not
I
sure whether Sita love. I'm not sure whether you should love, but I think you need the courage
yes.
to.
No, but it's true because you know why? Because I know what you mean by the moment you have self awareness, you have a lot of question marks. Oh, should I have had no this? Should I go back? You know, there's a bit of a struggle. But I think that the word you just said, if you're willing to say, you know what, I want to learn this. I want to love knowing myself. I want to have that. You know, I want to know who I really am. I want to love this
Mm.
real deep soul within me. And I think that's one way to get over that fear if we ever do have about self awareness, because it is an uncharted territory, isn't it? We are getting to discover new ways and
That's
new me's. Is me
true.
knowing me.
But you see, what fear needs is courage, not no fear.
Fear needs courage.
Fear needs courage, right? It is so. You see, when we think about leadership, right? It is not that they're taking, they're making choices because they are not fearful. They're making the right choices despite the fear, which is what we call courage. So if
Right.
you have no fear, you don't need courage.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So anyway, Evelyn, thank you. She says, yeah, hard to go back to where you were before, and that for me, sometimes I think it's a double edged sword. All right. So the final leader that we're going to talk about. Sure.
Is Anne, right?
Mm.
And interesting. Born in Netherlands and had moved to Asia. She spent time in Vietnam and India, China, and Singapore too. You know, and she travels between Thailand and Singapore now. Now, what is interesting about her was she also had a question, right? Who am I? And it came out all the time, you know, in different ways, you know. And she was saying that when she was very young, she was very clear, I'm going to be a captain of a ship. And then she was much older, she was lost. You know, she didn't know what. There was no captain, there was no ship, there was no journey, there's nothing, you know, just turmoil. And she decided to jump into law school and she studied law. But even there was a realization because law showed to her that the world was full of legislation. And so, therefore, her thinking was, you know what? I don't need to know law to fight. I need to build. And she made a choice at that point of time. She said, I'm going to build, not fight. And when she went on in her career, apart from being a practicing lawyer, then she went on to being a consultant also. uh, she realized that she needed to develop different levels of skills and competencies. She talked about developing empathy, putting yourself in different people's shoes, about listening, about always constantly adding value to people. And because I think it's probably also because not only in Netherlands, but when she came to Asia, she said she had to be very clear about the way she communicated, right? And her mindset was always about finding solutions. And that's why she even shared with us, right? The best contracts are never reopened again, right? Because it's not about fighting, it's coming to a win win situation. And even in a business point of view, what she said was the focus should be about the commercial outcomes. That should be the first priority. Legalities are second, you know? And yes, you got to be creative and always look for solutions. In her sharing, I felt there was one story she talked about where she was in Vietnam and she went to a sweatshop, if you call it, right? Shoe shop, right? And that's when uh, her perception of life changed, because in Netherlands she has not seen hardship, but here she was witnessing hardship among the children, and to her there was an insight. Say yes, we are sitting from the outside and we are making judgments about human choices, especially about child labor. But she said when she looked at that, she said, do not judge that, because if it's not child labor, maybe it could have been child prostitution, right? Sitting in the ivory tower is so easy to make those judgments, but when you get down to the nitty gritties, right, you see that people who make choices are also not in an easy position, right? And that was my takeaway from Anne. Learn to build, not fight.
Nice. In fact, I think learn to build, not fight was interesting because she chose to be a lawyer and then she decided not to fight. Again, right? So if you look at Anne, we looked at how she looked at transitions, right? So she really pauses as to what she wants. I don't want, there's a story why she became a lawyer.
Mhm.
And then she is like, now at crossroad, I don't like to fight.
Right.
And I choose a road that is not often chosen, right? And then you realize in the stories that you shared how she uses it over and over again for to create her self-awareness. She's
Mm.
reflective. Every time something happens in front of her, she's reflecting. She's choosing her values. Even now, as she's looking at starting being in a new business, she's looking at how to now be relevant and shift to use her skills to do something that is right and good for the world, right? Of course, her integrated life is pretty clear. We didn't get to speak to her about her support team, right?
Yeah.
But so over and over again, and that's why I thought, hey, this month would be really, really okay, we have audience at Ashok's place. When they stop barking, you can unmute yourself. So, which is why, this week we actually thought we'll introduce you to a framework which is authentic leadership. And you can, well, I won't say you can find this framework. We designed this framework based on the stories in Your True North by Bill George. Now, as we do that, if you have questions, just put it up in a comment. But otherwise, I want to really, really thank everybody who's joined us and enriched our conversation today. Evelyn, thank you for joining us. Udam, Louis, Chris Lomas, you've gone quiet. Sasi, I hope you took, you got something that you wanted from leadership. Radhika, Sham, if she's still there, lah. So these, we've had a rich conversation, and before we end, Ashok, do you have anything to say?
We have something from Evelyn, right? Because you mentioned about courage. Fear needs courage. So Evelyn also then said, "Yeah, but phobia comes before courage."
Yeah,
That's true.
courage. Courage is just going through your phobia, right?
Ah,
I mean, for me, right now, it would be the roller coasters my kids make me go through, right? When I'm on the roller coaster, it's not that I'm not scared. I'm like, oh gosh, what did I sign up for, right? And people think I'm courageous. No, you just go through your fear because, well, whatever it is, why you're the reason why you're doing it.
right, right. And
All
Alvin
right.
Nato says, "Great sharing. Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Alvin." Now, Muller, before you go way before you run off, right? I got some question, maybe just one question about the authentic leadership, right?
Mm,
Again, as you're sharing, I see the journey. I can reflect on all our past leaders since last year, right? Everybody had gone through a story,
mhm.
and I think it's important to get those stories out, because we really get to understand where people make choices. Now, the thing is this, yes, okay, so Captain Shan Murthy has got a question, which is where I was going to come from anyway. Why is self-awareness a double-edged sword? Thank you, Shan, for asking that.
This is my abang and my chegu, but yeah, well, I'm assuming you didn't join earlier. I'm saying that once you become aware, it's very difficult to going back to not being aware. And for me, sometimes I think life is much easier when I'm not aware because I'm not aware of my strength, my weaknesses, my values. Because once I know, then it becomes, for me, it becomes challenging, because now I have to live my life in the knowledge, with the knowledge that I have. So that's what I meant by it's a double-edged sword for me. Once you're there, there's no turning back, Captain Chan. All right.
Okay,
So,
so my question, right? I haven't finished with my question.
yeah.
Okay, so very very nicely you put down there that yes, you need to understand your strengths and weaknesses, right? And when you were sharing, it became very clear to me. Yes, it's a journey, and you need to continuously have the tools to be self-aware. And I think you got to love the self-awareness to get over the fear. For me, now that's my takeaway. Now, from your experience, right? What are the mistakes people make when they see their weaknesses?
Ha, oh boy. I won't call it mistake. I'm not sure
Okay.
whether I'll use the word mistake. I would only speak for myself. I think when we think about weakness, right?
Okay, weakness. Okay.
I mean, think about it, right? How many of us generally have grown up appreciating that it's okay to have weakness? What is
Very right.
drummed? What is drum? I mean, some of you are from Singapore, right? Right? So I really think that authenticity simply means to be your true self.
Okay.
And your true self is the human self.
The human
And the
self.
human self is imperfect. Full stop.
Okay.
Now, if you look at all the things that we are trying to be in the name of success, right? A lot of these things that we're talking about success ask us to become the ideal version, i.e., perfection. So, even if you have a weakness, you're not supposed to show your weaknesses, right? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't overcome your weakness. I'm not saying that, yeah. But all I'm saying is that there would be your human side that will come through in who you
Mhm.
are, right? Which is seen as a weakness sometimes. Like, for example, the simple example I can give you from a EQ point of view, right? Very often, when you see someone who shows emotions at work, it's seen as a negative thing. It's a weakness. It's a weakness because you feel too much. It's a weakness because you're passionate, right? And very often, whatever that is termed as negative emotion is what is seen as a weakness. But if you think about it, right, if someone gets angry, for example, and I'm talking about appropriate anger and appropriate show of anger, right? What's wrong in appropriate show of anger? I think a leader should get angry
Mm.
when things are not going right. And we know this about authentic leaders, right? They show the human side of themselves, right? They are able to tell you, oh, I made a mistake. They tell their own stories, And one of my favorite stories, Ashok, in this book that really moved me, I'm not a Starbucks fan, okay? I'm a
Okay.
Nescafe fan, right? Is the story of Howard Schultz, right? A lot of us know this story, his story. Oh, yes, he built Starbucks. And why did he, build Starbucks? Because he was in Italy and he had this dream of people gathering around coffee,
Okay.
right? And he said, I wanted a place where communities gather, all right? And he had a bad relationship with his father.
Mm.
When he was doing his own life journey in this book, he, he shares how one of his friends helped him to recognize. So in Starbucks, right, when the story was written, they look after their employees really, really well, and that was one of the highlights of Starbucks or Starbucks culture. People gather, people are not bugging you and stuff like that, right? But if you read the story of Howard Schultz, right, it's amazing because when he was a little boy, how the father got into an accident. As a result, they didn't have insurance and the mother was pregnant. And he said they had to learn how to lie when people called.
Mm.
That one event had shaped him because he then realized how the collar workers were treated, which then shaped his values and his identity as a leader. when he
Nice.
finally had, when he built Starbucks, he treated his employees very, very differently. In fact, when the story was uncovered, he said only then he said, because of how he saw his dad and he didn't want that thing to affect any other child like him, i.e., his father, he decided to build Starbucks in a very different way. I mean, that's an amazing story of leadership.
It is. It
Okay,
is.
it is 7:01. I
No,
will
but
end
thank you
this
very
story.
much. No, thank you, Mother. Your story is so engaging. I didn't even realize hours have passed. This 1 hour, it's been wonderful because you've shared a lot of wisdom with us, from frameworks to aligning the stories and showing out how it comes alive within the framework, and of course sharing the story about the Harvard Souls itself, right? No, thank you very very much. And I'm sure all who are listening in have benefited and will benefit. And I guess one of the advice for everyone is start to now look at your life journey, right? And look at where were your moments of crucibles, right? Where the choices you made. So to identify what are your strengths and how to build on those strengths, right? To find your true north, right?
Nice.
So thank you very much. And Malal, do you have anything else to add? Because Evelyn has said she's so glad she joined.
Oh, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Evelyn. You make my day. Evelyn, Captain Shan, Alvineto. So, those who want a framework, send me a DM and then I will send you the framework, okay? I'm trying to be naughty by not putting it in the comment. So, thank you very much, Ashok. Thank you for, always encouraging me, in doing what I'm doing. With that, we're going to say good night, I guess, and selamat berbuka puasa to our Muslim friends. And with that, until we see you with another guest star, and I'm sure our next guest is also authentic. With that, this is Mallory signing off from Hollywood.
And Ashok from Singapore. Have fun, guys.